Lately I've been thinking about this life and how it brought me here. Staring at this man in the mirror, I see him often here. Wipe my tears, only if you knew what I was going through. Only if you walked it in my shoes. Certain things don't like to talk about, but I'll always remember.
Welcome to the Message Hope podcast, where hope stands for hearing other people's experience. My name is Adam.
My name is Mike, and today on the show we have a guest that has a different story than most of our other guests, a different background, and we're excited to have her on. She has a little over a year clean. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. A different story.
Okay, what I'm referring to is like in our fellowship, there's not a lot of people with military backgrounds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I was about to say,
clear.
dang, you know what?
Yeah.
Here I go, just thinking about all the differences.
No, we've had one other guy.
Carlos had, you ever met Carlos?
Yeah, I like Carlos a lot.
He has 20 years. He was like 20 years in the military.
Yeah.
Really rough around the edges.
I love that.
He had some military, then some addiction, then back to the military, then back to addiction, and now recovery.
Yeah, he's a good ass dude.
That's what I was referring to. Sorry, I didn't mean to make that weird.
I was like, what the hell are you talking about?
I'm just messing with you.
Yeah.
Is it because she has green hair, Mike? Is that why?
That too. So, yeah. Ryan, tell us a little bit about how you grew up and where you grew up and what that was like for you.
Well, I just want to thank you guys for letting me be on here. I have been like listening to you guys' podcast for like 8 months, and I'm like, I don't know. I think I messaged both of you guys and was like, man, you guys are doing such a great thing here. Yeah. So like, I really appreciate it. It's nice to be able to, hear other stories that, make me feel like I'm not alone. And also, make me feel like, damn, my life is not as fucked up as I thought it was. I'm just kidding.
It took a long time for us to hear that, I think. We were doing this for quite a while, and like nobody said anything like that. So thank you for that.
We actually got some negative remarks at first.
Yeah.
Some negative.
Sideways ones.
Sideways, yeah.
Not
very
too
passive-aggressive posts and stuff like that. And Mike's super chillaxed, and I'm like, man, fuck you. You know what I'm saying? I want to say something. I didn't say nothing, but anyway.
Yeah, haters.
Not everyone's happy for you.
No.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's absolutely true. So childhood was not that great. Both of my parents are addicts. And my earliest memory, we lived in West Covina. It was my great-grandfather's house on my mom's side. And my earliest memory was my dad getting arrested. He was an alcoholic and loved meth. And and that was really traumatic. I know my parents always fought. So we probably lived there for like a year or two. I was really, really young. And then after that, I can think of only 2 other like actual homes that we lived in. One was, they were actually both in Yucaipa. One was like a really, really broke down house. The roof leaked all the time in like multiple different areas. But other than that, we were living in motels. And it's so funny because, I like when I was younger, before I found the rooms and before, I came to the realization that I was also an addict, I really didn't understand like why we couldn't, why we were constantly moving,
Yeah.
And I realize now that it was because my parents were addicts too, and they were doing drugs and when you do drugs, you can't really manage your money because it's going to drugs, so that was crazy. I remember this one time, I probably was like, I don't even think I was in school at this time. So I probably had to be like, I don't know, maybe 4 or something like that. Maybe I was a little bit older. I'm honestly like, my childhood it's really jumbled up. I can't really remember a whole lot about it. But this one time my mom had, because she worked nights, right? She's always worked at Denny's. And I don't know, my dad was always fucking off, you know? And my brother had gone to school, and my mom had taken me out to breakfast that morning, and my dad was passed out, and we came back, and it was like the motel is demolished now. It was the one off of where the Costco is in San Bernardino. Mm-hmm. Like right when you exit, there used to be like a motel that was right there. It was 2 stories, and he was on the top roof, like screaming at the top of his lungs, drunk, of course, throwing all of our clothes off of the 2nd story balcony, you know. Damn. And they were just like hitting the car, and my mom was just like this emotional wreck. And yeah, and you know, there we go. And you know, it was always like that, you know, back and forth. You know, they'd fight, they'd make up, they'd fight, they'd make up, you know. And we were of course dragged through the trenches on that. And then I remember after that house that we lived in, it was really only for like a short amount of time. And I don't remember meeting this person, but there was like a field right across from our house, and there was like a house on the opposite side of the field, and I had started kindergarten in that house, and I think I met, this is my very first best friend, Michael Sorensen, in kindergarten. Mm-hmm. And I would always go there, like when my dad was passed out during the day, and because my dad would work during the day, and my mom would be sleeping, you know, and I would go over there. And it was like, you know, it was almost like a refuge, you know. I'm pretty sure that they were addicts too, because I mean, you know, when we're addicts, we don't ever have normal friends. They're always friends that are using, you know. But they had horses, and yeah. And it was just like, it was just a lot of instability, you know. And then we moved to a bunch of different motels after that, and then we got an apartment, and I remember this one specific time there where my mom had gone to work because she worked nights, and my dad was of course drunk, and he had made this like he was very verbally abusive, but he would also get physical too, and he had made this like wooden paddle, and he drilled holes in the paddle, you know. And I mean, as like a 5-year-old like girl, like I mean, that was fucking terrifying, you know. My dad just being completely blitzed out of his mind, and he was always just very mean, you know. Like I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, like, but I mean, from the youngest age, I mean, I could remember him calling me just like terrible names, you know, like bitch. I don't know if that's allowed, or or like the SLUT, you know. And I remember this one time hiding from him because I was so terrified that he was going to find me, you know. And
was it just you two?
It was at the time.
You and your brother?
Yeah, it was. Oh yeah. So I have an older brother. Okay. Well, I have 4 brothers. Okay. No, I have 5 total. But one biological brother, and then one that's older than him, but my mom had given him up for adoption. And I actually just recently met him, like 2 months before I like finally came back to the program, and decided that I just didn't want to live my life like that anymore. And then I have 3 younger brothers that are from my stepdad. And then so after that, we weren't living there for very long, and so, you know, we were moving motel to motel, and I remember this one time that my grandma came to pick me up, and we were driving on the outer highway of Yucaipa, and there used to be like a memorial like for Jesus, right, where it was like a clay, like where he had passed away when Jesus died on the cross, and then they put him in that tomb and then rolled the stone over. They had like this whole like memorial thing there. So she had took me there that morning, right? And and it was like, I never grew up in any type of religious aspect, but when I can remember like the first time like really hearing about Jesus and God was that at that time, right? And so we left there and we were driving up the Highway 38, and she said to me like, how would you feel about coming and living with me? You know? And I just told her, I was so confused, you know, and I told her, well, like, I don't want to, you know? And she was like, well, like, it's too bad, you know, like you have to come and live with me.
At least she asked how you felt about it first.
And she told me that, you know, my parents couldn't take care of me and that I had to come and live with her. And I just remember feeling absolutely heartbroken. Like, I remember feeling extremely sick to my stomach. And I mean, she's always been like a huge part of my life. You know, I mean, obviously my parents were really unstable. So, you know, they would drop me off at her house all the time. Like, she would come and make sure we had food, clothes, things like that, you know? And, yeah, so going and living with my grandma, like, that was really confusing, you know? It was a lot, it was a lot of stability, you know? She really did an amazing job, you know? Some of my fondest memories of her would be like, when I was in elementary school, I had, probably because, like, you know, my parents obviously weren't up on my schoolwork or working with me, I had a really hard time reading. So I had to go into this like class like during school so they could help me read and stuff like that. And we would have those spelling tests like every week, you know, and she would sit there and like practice my spelling work with me, you know. And this is also embarrassing, but she would bring out like a little radio, or, you know, that would play, like, I don't know if it was like, it was tapes at the time, you know. And she, because I love to sing, and so she would turn on, she loved Patsy Cline, and she would turn on the radio, the stereo in the kitchen, and she would make me come and like sing to her in the kitchen. Yeah, she really made me feel special, you know? Yeah. And so my dad, at that point, you know, my parents had split, and my dad, he was just all over the place, you know. He would come like maybe every 6 months. And then my grandma, she would let me go with him. You know, it like, thinking back on that now, I'm just like, that is the most bizarre thing. You know what I'm saying? Like,
was that his mom or your mom's mom?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was his mom. She really co-signed a lot of his bullshit, you know? And so that was very, confusing, you know. And my mom, she had met my stepdad and kind of like started this new life with him, you know. And it wasn't long before that she got pregnant. And that's another time I'll never ever forget. My grandma had taken me over to like visit her, but she would like rarely let me go and stay with her, but she would take me to go and like visit her at like the Denny's or whatever, you know. And I remember sitting in this booth and my mom sitting down and being like, so how would you feel if you had a new brother, you know?
How old were you then?
I think I was probably like 7 or 8. Yeah. And I was like, I don't want another brother, you know? And she's got so mad at me. And she was like, well, that's too bad because I'm pregnant and you're going to have a little brother, you know? And, yeah, I was not very happy, you know? All I wanted was to have my parents there, you know? And, yeah, so, I didn't mention this, but my grandma, was married to my papa, which is it was her, that would be like my step grandpa, you know, but, he was really like the first consistent man in my life. He loved me a lot. And I'm just so grateful for that time that I got to have with him. You know, he would call me like Sugar Plum, and he just made me feel so special, you know. And but my grandma, she was kind of like a B word, you know. she really had a spicy side to her. And I remember like this one time he would buy like mass amounts of tools, like, and have like triples of the same one. Like, he just loved to buy things, you know. And so he had like this workshop outside of like the mobile home that they lived at. And she was off at work, you know, and she wanted grass in like this rock area in the backyard. And so he like bought this like rototiller. It's like basically what like tills up the dirt, you know, so you can plant grass. And so he like had brought me out there, and he like put the thing together like all day long, you know, and he was so freaking proud and so excited, because he's like, I'm going to put grass in for your grandma, you know. Mm-hmm. And then when she got home, she was pissed. Like she just screamed at him and made him feel just like awful, you know. I'll never forget that, because I just remember thinking like, all he wanted was to feel like appreciated, you know what I mean? Yeah. And she just did not, like, she didn't. And so the first time, obviously I knew there was something wrong with my parents, you know what I mean? But, and I knew my dad drank and had an alcohol problem, but I was so young, like I really just did not understand that a whole lot, you know? The first time that I had ever seen methamphetamine was, I went to go visit my dad one time, and he lived in this trailer park in Redlands, and my brother was staying with him, and I don't even know where he was. He was probably off, like, you know, fucking off with his friends or something like that. But my brother was there, and he busted out this foil, you know, and he told me he was smoking sugar. And he did it right in front of me, you know. And
your dad did?
My brother did. Yeah, my brother did. And I just remember, like, when I would go visit my dad there, like, he was just, I mean, I was like, I would wander around Redlands, like 8 years old, you know what I mean? Like I don't know, just thinking back on the shit, like, I would never let my kids, you know, I would never ever let them do that. Like, it's insane, you know? I mean, even my daughter at like 16 years old, I wouldn't let her, like, I just wouldn't. And, so yeah, I had no idea what that was. I thought it was weird that he was smoking sugar, but you know, later to come to find out that, you know, he was smoking meth. And so my grandmother decided that she was going to leave my grandpa, and they've been together for like 18 years, you know, and it's really foggy on exactly like how it all transpired, but she literally packed up the whole entire house and left him with nothing, and moved us to the north end of Las Vegas. Which I don't know if you guys know about the north end of Las Vegas, but it's it's very ghetto out there, and lots of drugs, and I think we were probably there for like 6 months, and she decided that she was going to bring my dad and my brother along, you know, and they were both on drugs. And I just remember like that being like such, like, it was my whole childhood was fucking chaotic, you know what I mean? But I remember feeling very scared during that time. And my dad and my brother were constantly fighting, you know, my brother had like broken into my grandma's storage and like stole a bunch of her stuff. And then I get introduced to this new school, you know, and I wasn't liked very much. Well, you know, I have to say, like, in all of my school, like, I was not liked very much. I was bullied a lot. And that was the first time that my life had gotten threatened to me. I think I was like I don't know, maybe like 10 or 11. And this girl that was probably like 17, we lived in this like really bad trailer park, and she threatened to kill me. And I was fucking so scared, man. So that didn't last very long. You know what I mean? My grandma, I think she soon realized what a terrible decision that was, you know, because now she's never been like that hardcore. You know what I mean? I think at one point she was addicted to prescription pain meds. But like to actually have like 2 full-blown addicts in the house that are like just it's insanity all the time. You know, I think she realized, wow, like it's not so bad. You know, it wasn't so bad that what I had, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so we end up moving back, and we went to go visit my grandpa, and we found him unconscious in his bedroom, naked. He had a stroke, you know? Oh, wow. And so then he went to go stay in the VA, and he just never left. And he had weekend visits with us, and my grandma still continued to let my brother and my dad live in the house, you know? And at that point, because, you know, my grandma's always been really stable. Like we lived in a decent house in Yucaipa. My dad was like full blown. It was bad. And, I think I'd seen my first porno there that my brother had showed me with like his friends. And this one night my dad was so bad. I think I upset him for some reason, and he threatened to blow my head off, with a shotgun. And I was terrified. And so I called the police, and he ended up getting arrested and going to jail for like 6 months, which he held over my head for, forever. Mm-hmm. So when I lived in that house, that was the first time that I had ever tried any type of drug. So my oldest friend was visiting from Michigan, and she was a huge pothead, and life at home was just, you know, really not great. And I went to go meet her, because, you know, back then, like we walked everywhere, you know what I mean? It was it was like a different time, you know what I'm saying? Like I was all over the freaking town, you know? And she had this like little Altoids like can, you know what I mean? and she opened the Altoids can, and she's like, "Do you want to smoke a doobie?" You know? and I, at this point I knew, like, you know, I knew what meth was. You know, everybody in my family smokes weed, still to this day does. And I was like, sure, why not?
How old were you then? I
was probably like, I want to say like 14. So we smoked this joint, and afterwards I was like, I didn't feel anything, you know? And I was like, this is so, I didn't know what to expect, but like I wanted to feel something, you know what I mean? And I didn't. And I was like, this is stupid. Like, what's the point of even doing this, you know? So I didn't touch that for like a few years later. And then that was the first time that I had tried alcohol too, was in that house. My brother had brought home like a 6-pack of Mickey's, and we had this huge walnut orchard in our backyard, you know? And so he had me try beer for the first time, and I just remember, this is so disgusting. Yeah. And so we lived there for quite a few years, and then my dad like pieced out, and my grandma, she actually bought a mobile home in Mentone, you know? And I think with that the breaking point at that point was him like threatening to blow my head off, you know? And so like a few years pass, and, you know, she's like bought this home in Mentone, and so my brother at this point, I think I had to be like 16 years old, and cause my brother is 3 years older than me. So he was 19. So he gets this girlfriend that's like 40 years old, right? And they ended up getting married and everything. But she owned a house up in San Bernardino, in like the nicer area of San Bernardino. And then he started having me come over on the weekends, you know? And so I will never forget, because, you know, as I've been working like my steps, like just thinking about like, okay, when was it that like really got me like, this is it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We went over there, and I was not really much into drinking, but they were all partying, and he comes into the kitchen and he's got this bottle of pills, and they were the yellow Vicodins, you know, and he breaks one in half and he hands it to me, and he says, "Here, take this." Because he had two in his hand, he broke one in half. And I said, "Well, what is it?" He said, "Don't worry about it. You'll find out in 40 minutes. And so he took the 1.5, I took the half. And I mean, not even like 25, 30 minutes later, like the feeling hit me, you know? And I'm telling you, like, I was like, wow, like, this is it. You know what I mean? Like, for the first time, I didn't feel like I was nothing, you know what I mean? It gave me like this confidence, and it also made me feel happy, you know, like I was very unhappy, you know? And so obviously I'm only fucking 16 years old, you know what I mean? Like I'm not out there like buying Vicodin, you know. I was a very shy teenager. Like my mom would call me a wallflower, and I didn't know what that was until I looked it up. And basically it means just like somebody that's seen and not heard, you know. And I've always been very scared of getting in trouble, and so that was just like in the beginning on the weekends. You know, like any chance that I could go over to his house to get those pills, like I was about it, you know what I mean? And then it progressed because like I said, my grandmother, she had like multiple knee surgeries, and I feel she did deal with chronic pain, but at this point I feel like she was like addicted to the pain meds. So I knew where her pain med stash was, you know? And then when the weekends were no longer good enough, I started stealing the pain meds from my grandma. And then during that time, like me and my cousin, we would go to like the drugstores or like Stater Brothers and steal the Chloroseed and cough and cold meds. Let's fucking go. And we would take like, you know, a pack or two of those to ourselves, and, you know, just stay up so we could trip balls later on. You know what I'm
I remember doing that in high school and just like not knowing what happened the entire day. With the triple C's, that's what we called them.
Yeah.
You ever do those?
No.
You're missing out, buddy. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Maybe I'll go grab some on the way home.
And they don't show up on a drug test either. So.
And you can't even get them anymore. I mean, they stopped I think they even stopped selling them. I'm not really 100% sure, but yeah. And I remember this one time me and my cousin, we were in the bedroom, and we were freaking tripping balls, and we were like working on this like school project of hers, like this shield based off of her last name, you know, and like and it would turn your body red, like the medicine would, you know, like you would be flushed. And my grandma comes in and she's just like, "What is wrong with you guys?" You know what I mean? And we're like, "Nothing, like we were just dyeing our hair." Like I'm pretty sure she knew like that we were doing some stupid shit, but she just, you know, yeah. And so, it was just kind of like that, you know, not a whole bunch, during that time. But then when I turned 18, I started smoking weed every day, and like occasionally taking pills, you know. Like I said, I was never really a big drinker. Gosh, I don't even know how much time we have, but I'm going to speed this up. Yeah, so fast forward, I meet my son's dad, and then shortly after that, I got pregnant, and he didn't want me to keep it, but I refused, and said I wasn't going to do that. And then he had some very choice words, and I told him that I cheated on him, which was a total lie, just because I wanted to like run away. You know what I mean? Like, I just wanted him to stop like saying all these awful things to me. And then, if I just say this one thing, then he'll just leave me alone, which he did. And nobody ever knew on his side of the family about like the pregnancy until I had my son Seth, and my grandma actually called his mom and was like, you know what, your son, she like totally spilled the beans. And and so he still was not a part of his life. And then when I was actually pregnant with my son is when I met my daughter's dad. I always say like, because of, I feel for me personally, the lack of like my father's consistency in my life really made me seek after that type of love in like all the wrong ways. You know what I mean? And I always say like I was either chasing a sack or chasing the ball sack, So when I was pregnant,
we do the same thing. I did the same thing. I heard somebody say one time,
my chase is the ball sack. I know, but yeah.
I heard this guy share about a woman is just a bag of dope with skin on it. You ever hear that?
Lord.
Yeah. Same kind of thing.
And so during that pregnancy, I met my daughter's dad, and we like smoked weed together. So I guess that's something that that I don't admit to a lot of people, but I guess I'll just say it here. And I've said it to have to say it to my sponsor because I'm on my 4th step right now. That I smoked weed during both my pregnancies. So that we got married. I got married to my daughter's dad, and he was an alcoholic, very verbally abusive. Basically, I married my dad, but just like a super young version of him,
Yeah.
And he was also a cheater. And so he cheated on me a bunch of times. I actually walked in on him with 2 girls one time. That was very devastating. And when I had gotten pregnant with my daughter, he had been telling me, because he was off living his party life, he had told me, you need to get on birth control. Like, I don't want to have another kid. And because he was assuming responsibility over Seth, and I didn't. Like, I was so depressed during this time. I was like 125 pounds, skin and bones. I was just fucking trying to survive. And I got pregnant. He was absolutely pissed off. And he wanted me to also get rid of her. And you know what? I actually agreed to it. All I wanted was for this to work out. I felt like, for better or worse, like I'm doing this for God, like this is my husband. And we had dropped my son off with my grandma. And the day that morning when we had our appointment, we were on our way and his mom called him. I don't even know how she found out. We did not tell anybody, but she was like, do not have your wife do this. Like you will never look at her the same, So I'm so grateful for that intervention from God, because that was totally not on my doing at all, and she's such a blessing in my life, spicy, but like she's amazing. So, tons of cheating with that on his side. And so I broke it off with him, and then I feel like that was like when I really started just like really going downhill, like I would leave my kids all the time. I would go out to the bars, and do so not so great things that a woman should not be doing, and not respectable. And then let's see. So probably like, I I don't know, maybe like 6 months before I decided to join the Army, I went out with some friends. You know, I'm still taking pills at this point, like any chance that I can get, you know. And I tried an Oxycontin for my very first time. That shit knocked me the fuck out, you know. And my daughter Rosie, she was actually with me, and we were in like this fucking trap house, you know. Like, I really didn't know these people. It literally knocked me out. I was like out for fucking like 12 hours, you know. And then I wake up, come to, and like, you know, my daughter's just like walking. It was just like the fucking scariest thing ever. And I felt a lot of shame, you know. And my mom had talked to me after that, you know, and this is like the one and only conversation that she's ever had with me that's really been worth of anything, you know. I'm not saying anything bad about my mom, you know. She does the best as she can with what she knows, you know. And she told me, you know, like, I don't want you to be like me, you know. I don't want you to make the same mistakes and like miss this time with your kids like I did, you know. And so I decided to join the Army. And it was something that I had always wanted to do, you know. And actually, when I was 18, I went to go join the Coast Guard, but like, I had a lot of fear, you know. Like, I never had somebody, even though my grandma was great, like, I never had her telling me like, reach for the stars, like, you can do anything you put your mind to, you know. She never like encouraged me to do sports, like nothing like that, you know what I mean? So going into something like that, and I was super codependent on her, you know, like, I feel like she really made me that way. And so I backed out. Like, I passed the ASVAB, passed the drug test. I was going to swear in, and I said, I'm not going to do this. So, you know, yeah. So years later, I decided to join the Army, and I had both of my kids. And so that was amazing. Like, I absolutely loved it, you know. And for anybody who's like, of course, you know, it's a lot of BS, you know what I mean? But for somebody who's looking for just something, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of lost people go and join the military because
direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That was the first time that I had ever seen anything like that, you know, or any form of like resilience in my life. You know what I mean? Like, so that was great, you know, and then that became my identity. You know what I mean? Like, up until that point, like, I never felt like I was worth a damn, you know. And now I have this thing, you know, where they're telling me like only like 2% of the population do this, and, you know, we're lions and they're gazelle and like all these things, you know. And like, it really made me feel like I was worth something, you know. So, I was in the Army for 8 years, and 2 years prior to my my separation, mind you, I had smoked weed this whole entire time. Okay.
In the Army?
In the Army.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I don't know how I didn't get busted until I did get busted. So, you know, I was always like, okay, like a yes man, you know, if it was asked of me, I was going to do it. Like, my main goal there was like to get up in rank, you know. I wanted to be a drill sergeant. Like, that was my Army dream, you know. Just to be able to see like the light come on in somebody's eyes, you know. It's a lot like recovery, you know what I mean? Yeah. And like being a sergeant, you know, like, you're like leading these like privates, you know, who like don't believe in themselves and have no structure. And it's just like, it is one of the greatest feelings, you know. And for a while I was what they would call like a glorified drill sergeant. It was like stepping stones, you know. And so it was like basically like a recruit and sustainment program. So before the enlisted would leave, they still have to report. Once you enlist, like, you still have to report, like, for accountability, you know. And so we would teach them like basic military movement, hygiene, like things like that, you know. And then after that duty was up, I got sent to a unit, and I was a sergeant at this point. And my unit, this 1 month, they say, we need a female sergeant to take this class to be able to administer the drug test to the females here in the unit, right? And I was like, and I didn't say yes because I wanted to get out of taking the freaking drug test. I was just like, wow, this is an amazing opportunity to further my career, you know? Mm-hmm. And I was like, I volunteer, you know? And so they send me to this class, and I complete the class, and then they say, and I hadn't been smoking weed for 2 weeks prior to this, right? I was like, okay, I need to stop, right? Mm-hmm. Or at least for this time, you know? And they say, well, now you have to pass a drug test. I was shitting bricks, dude. I was like, there's no fucking way I'm going to be able to pass this drug test, you know? So I go and my brother, you know, he comes along and he takes me to this head shop down in, it was like Downey or something. And I go in, and I didn't have a change of clothes, mind you. So I was in my uniform. Okay. And I sent him in to go get this thing because I was like, dude, I can't go in there. Like, I'm in my fucking uniform. You know what I mean? So he goes in there and he comes out pretending like he doesn't even know what the hell he's looking for. He's like, I don't know what, you know, I can't do this. And I'm just like, what the hell? So basically I'm so fucking desperate. I like take off my top. So it's just like my regular like army shirt underneath, but I still have my pants on. I still have my boots on. I go in here to get this freaking, this damn detox thing, you know? Mm-hmm. And the girl that was checking me out was like, you know what? You should be ashamed of yourself. And I was like,
and she's working in a smoke shop.
I know. And so she goes on to tell me that she's a staff sergeant for like this Marine, like for a Marine reserve. Right. And I was like, I fucking popped back at her and I was all, what the hell? Like, why are you even telling me this? Like, you're literally fucking working in this smoke shop. You know what I mean? And she was just like, you should just be ashamed of yourself, you know? And I was. Dude. At first I had a lot of freaking resentment over that situation, but like when I look back on it today, like I should have been ashamed of myself. Like I really squandered that opportunity. So anyway, so I take this drug test, right? I don't hear back. And at this point I had a government job. Okay, I had gotten a job through the Army, but it was like a civilian job, best job that I had up until this point. Like I was able to take care of my kids, pay all my bills, have a little extra, do fun things with them, and I had re-enlisted, right? And so I was supposed to get a bonus with this re-enlistment. And it had been like months after I'd taken this test and I hadn't received the bonus, you know? And so I was like, well, what's going on with this? So I had talked to one of my sergeants that was in the unit that I was working in, and he looked up my stuff and it showed that I had gotten flagged for popping hot on this drug test, you know? And so, that was awful. And I lost my job. And now I'm flagged in my unit, right? And so my commander absolutely hates me because this came from Sacramento. This isn't just like me popping hot at a drug test at my unit. I went to like a class you know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's a whole chain of command. So I basically got shunned after that. Like I got, when they would go out and they'd take the whole unit out, I'd get stuck in the back to like deal with like, you know, the privates that were on medical and like, it was tough. So I had to go before basically like a court hearing, but it's for the military, you know? And at this point, dude, I was clean, right? Because like when I got tested positive, right? I was like trying to save my military career. Like I was fucking doing anything, but my unit was not helping me at all. So I looked up all these things that I had to do. And one was like, you have to get yourself into a treatment program and you have to piss clean on these tests. And so I found IVRS in San Bernardino. So I found IVRS and, I just remember pulling up to that place and I was just like, oh my God, like I am not meant to be here, you know? And it's so crazy because I thought so highly of myself, yet I had the lowest self-esteem you could imagine, you know? And so I couldn't stay clean there for like a month, you know what I mean? And they just kept telling me, like, if you cannot piss clean on these tests, like, you're not going to pass this, you know? And all I was thinking about was my fucking military career. And so I did it, right? And then they had me, you know, sign my little yellow card, you know, and so that's how I found the Rooms of Narcotics Anonymous, was through that program, you know. And so I come to my graduation day and, you know, they give you that little statistic, like, only 2 of you guys are going to stay clean. And I stood up and I was like, and that too, one of those is going to be me. And I did not stay clean.
It's always that one who says, I'm going to be the one.
Yeah. So my ego was fucking through the roof. It was so crazy, you know? And a lot of that was because of the whole military experience. Like, literally, they make you feel like you are better than everybody else, you know? And I had a lot of indifference at that time, you know. When I came in, I would just automatically see the difference. Like, oh, I dress better than them. Oh, I didn't live under a bridge. I didn't lose my kids. I never put a needle in my arm. Like, all those things, right? In the very beginning, that separate me from everybody else, you know. And it's funny because, like, once that stopped, like, our disease is so fucking crazy. You know what I mean? It starts telling you different shit, but like same shit, but in a different way. Right. You know what I mean? So like, now that whole situation's passed, where I'm not like looking at the differences now, it's like, well, I'm not good enough to be here because I haven't stuck a needle in my arm, or I haven't lived under a bridge. You know what I mean? Just like coming to this podcast, like, I'm so honored that I'm here. But like, I was even telling Adam, like, I'm like, my story, like, I've never done any of these things. You know what I mean? Like, what is somebody going to want to hear from me? You know what I mean? Like, my story's junk, you know?
Yeah. We all feel that way.
Yeah.
And as we evolve, our disease evolves. It starts to talk to us. I shared about this last night. It doesn't say the things it used to say to me in early recovery. It talks to me in a whole different way, in a whole different manner, right? But like, another person that struggled with that was Worry C. We had him on. And I tell them all, bro, like, everybody has a fucking story. There's people that Ryan's going to be able to reach, right? That Mike and I can't reach, right? There's people that Mike's going to be able to reach that me and you can't reach, right? And there's people that I'm going to be able to reach that you guys aren't going to be able to reach. And like the differences is what gives us power. Yeah. Right. And we don't, and I shared about this too, right? Like, okay, so I never been to prison. I've been to jail a few times. The longest time I've ever done is fucking 2-3 weeks tops, you know what I'm saying? So like, I don't have a big criminal history, right? And Mike has a more extensive, you know, Juan has a more extensive, right? But like, what connects us is how we feel.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And if you felt any of the feelings that we felt, lost, confused, you know, hopeless, godless, you know, emptiness, right? Like, then we're all the same, right? If
and you belong.
And you belong, right? And you belong. And I think that's like, even to the weed, right? Because people are like, oh, weed, you know what I'm saying? But like, it's a substance, right?
Absolutely, it is.
And it's something that you were doing, right? And I could only imagine that you were probably like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. It's just weed, right? But yet it's causing unmanageability in your life.
Absolutely.
Right? You become powerless. You're using it against your own will. Even though you know that you should not be smoking weed because of the position that you're in, you're still smoking weed regardless of the consequences, right? And it's making your life unmanageable.
Absolutely.
And for me, that's what I identify as an addiction, right? If I'm powerless over it, if I use against my own will or even against my better judgment, and then it starts to make my life unmanageable, then there's a problem there.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that now. You know what I mean?
You know what? I want to bring up one more thing because I remember I was talking to Ryan, I don't know, a few weeks ago, whatever it was, and she was like, yeah, you know, my my childhood wasn't that bad, right? And then she starts telling me about her childhood. I was like, bro, that's a broken home.
Yeah.
What you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But it's like our heads tell us, like, it wasn't, because it almost becomes normal because of the people that our parents hung out with, like those households were the same, right? And so we think it's normal. We think it's normal to get hit with a switch, or normal to get hit with a paddle, or normal to get chili, put in your mouth, but like, are thrown up against the wall, or any of those things that me and my sisters, we even laugh about some of that shit that my mom did to us, or you know what I'm saying? But it's like, I just found it really funny, because then you like really got into your story today, and it's like, it wasn't a great childhood.
Yeah.
So when was it final that like you were out of the Army?
In 2018.
Okay.
Yeah, in 2018.
So you went you tried to do all these things. And was it?
So during that time, 2016, I met my ex-husband, and at this point, like, I wasn't having to, probably like maybe 6 months into it, I stopped having to report to like my unit, you know what I mean? So, and I was still going to meetings and all of that, but I was taking pills, right? Because like in my head, I would always think like, well, nobody knows that I'm doing this. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't a problem, you know? And so he actually, like, and this is another thing, is like, I've never been able to make a decision for myself up until like the past 3 years. Like, man, I had to have somebody there, like, guiding my every fucking move, every direction, you know what I mean? And then it was like, I would always end up in situations that I just didn't want to be in, because I couldn't make a fucking choice for myself, you know? And so I remember when he took me down there for that final hearing, and he had been putting it in my ear, like, you need to just give this up. You need to, you need to be here for your family. Like, the reality of it is I think that he didn't like that I did like these things, you know what I mean? Like, that I did more than him, you know, like he is okay and complacent in where he's at. And that's just not me. You know what I mean? It really has never been, despite like my addiction. Like, even though I felt different as a child and like I had all these struggles, I always felt like I was meant for something different and something more in my life. Even though I like had all this terrible low self-esteem, you know, and always thought like, well, I guess this is my life. Like, you know, why is God doing this to me? Why are things so hard? Like, I have always been like a big dreamer, you know? And so I basically just folded, you know, and I was very, very emotional because,
are you talking about in the hearing?
Yes.
You folded?
Yeah. I probably totally could have like salvaged that whole thing, but I just gave up. You know, I was just like, well, he's probably right. Like, this is taking away from my family. I need to be here. But in all reality, like, I had never, before joining the Army, I'd never been able to provide for my family like I did. You know what I mean? And, so I did that. And I went in there and I was extremely emotional, which is not a good thing, especially in that type of situation. And they told me that they were going to separate, and that by the way that I was by the way like my emotional state didn't seem like I was fit for duty. And like looking back, it's like, I get it. Like, I'm supposed to be composed, but like my whole fucking career is about to go down the tubes. You know what I mean? Like, it was, and us women were like very emotional, you know? So, so that ended, and I no longer had an identity anymore. You know, I felt worthless, even more worthless than I did before. And I'm pretty sure, no, at this point, I had already tried cocaine. Like, I had done it before I had met my ex. I had done it maybe like once or twice. The first time that I did it, I was in a bathroom with a bunch of like these people that I was hanging out with, and we did it, and I literally cried. And I was like, and they're telling them, we shouldn't be doing this, guys. Like, we're so much better than this, you know? And then I did it a few times more with them, but everything really started.
We always just push that person out of the bathroom. Like,
yeah. Oh no, they told me, they were like, you need to stop. Like, this is really killing this right now. Like, you know, we're supposed to be having a good time, you know? Yeah. So, yeah. And, I didn't know that he did that. You know, of course, when we first met, for our first date, we got drunk. Like, that's just how it all started. You know what I mean? That's how we like connected, was like using, because alcohol is a drug, you know? And, the very first time that we did cocaine together, we were at, a bar, in Redlands off of Barton. And, it was for a Christmas party for my workplace. Right. And we decided to go have it at Taylor's. Let's go have a Christmas party at Taylor's, you know? And it was so bizarre because they were like busting out lines of cocaine on the fucking table. And I was just like, what is going on here? Like, how is this happening? Like, does anybody else see this? You know what I mean? And he looked at me and he was like, is it okay? Like, can we do this? You know? I didn't know that he was already doing it. Like, homeboy was like off and running on that shit for like way before I met him, you know? And I just wanted him to love me, you know? And so I was like, sure, you know? And yeah. And so we were together for about like 7 years. And at first, you know, the cocaine was like, you know, we were getting drunk all the time. Like at that point, I had not drinking like as much as I did. I've never drank as much as during that period of my life. You know, one thing that I would always hold like so proud is as I remember my son saying when he was like, I don't know, 12 or 13, that the first time he ever seen me touch an alcoholic beverage was when he was like 11. You know? So I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm doing something good, right? You know, because my son's 11 and he's barely seeing me versus like I was fucking so tiny, you know? And yeah, and so that was it took a while to snowball, but you know, once it did. And so I no longer had, you know, it got to a point where, you know, I wanted to blame him. That's the thing about addicts, right? Is we have a really hard time looking in the mirror being like, okay, my life is the way it is because of me. You know, I wanted to blame everybody else. And I wanted to blame him too, you know, but it got to a point where like, I was doing it by myself, you know, like I was fucking stuck in that bathroom. You know, while my kids are outside, I just can't leave the restroom, you know? And so things were, progressed, you know, and, were not good between us at all. You know, I feel like people can only meet us where they've met themselves, you know, and it just wasn't working between us, you know? And honestly, like I felt so alone and so unloved. And I just wanted to fucking die, you know? And, this, like my last, like real freaking like hoorah, it was New Year's Eve, 2022. And I was on the mend from COVID, and he calls me and he tells me he's not coming home, and I begged him, like I fucking begged. I've never begged another human being in my life as much as I did that night. Like, please just come home. Like, I just want you to be here. Like, I just want to spend New Year's with my husband. And he said no, and he stayed out all night long. And he didn't come home until the next morning at 9:00. And I had to go get a COVID test so I could return back to work. So I went to the urgent care to go get the COVID test. And I had called my boss before that. And he told me, well, are you feeling better? And I said, well, yeah. And he's like, don't worry about the COVID test. Just come back to work, you know? And I was like, okay, well, I didn't want to go home. You know, so I was like, and I was in my feelings. And, you know, what's funny is I didn't even remember this thing that I'm about to tell you. I didn't even remember this until 6 months after I stopped drinking and stopped doing hard drugs. So I went to the liquor store and I got 3 buzz balls and I downed those. And I called them and I called him and I said, oh, well, I'm not coming home. I think I'm just going to drive around and hang out, you know? And so I go back to the store and I get another 3 buzz balls and I down those. And I go back and I get another 3. So I find myself at Flag Hill Park in Yucaipa, and I am just a fucking absolute mess. I'm just bawling my eyes out. I called a couple coworkers, like, why is this happening to me? Why is my life like this? Like, why doesn't my husband love me? You know? And so I decide, fucking bawling my eyes out, like this emotional wreck, that I'm going to go for a drive in Oakland. Right. But at this point, like, I didn't want to be alive. I didn't want to die because I knew like what type of terror that would bring on to my children, but I did not want to be alive anymore, you know? And I just remember saying, like, if I have to live my life like this, like, I just don't want to be living, you know? And so I drove my car up into Oakland. And I was going really fast, like over 100 miles an hour. And I hit this dry patch of dirt on this corner. And like, I remember I knew I was going to lose control of my car, you know, and I just fucking let go of the wheel. And I just thought to myself, I just hope I don't make it out of this. But I did, you know, and, yeah. And so I ended up breaking my humerus, which is not very funny. It was very, very painful. And I had to have multiple surgeries on my elbow. And there's like rods and pins in there now. And so when that happened, he had called my mom and was like, I can't deal with her anymore. Like, you need to take care of her. Like, she's your responsibility now. So I go to my mom's house and I got like 30 days clean, right? Maybe it was like 29 days. And, of course I was on like pain meds, you know what I mean? And I was not abusing them at this point. Okay. I was just taking them as prescribed, you know, but I was like, man, like I haven't drank, I haven't done cocaine. And he says, you need to come home. Right. And so I come home and it wasn't 3 days later and I was already loaded, you know? And so, probably a week into that, I go, for my grandmother's 80th birthday, and I meet my brother that my mom had, given up for adoption for the very first time ever. And it's so crazy because, you know, I'd never met him before, but like out of all of my brothers, like I feel most connected to him, you know, and he was there with his wife, and like they just have like this wonderful, beautiful, amazing relationship. And he just like dotes over her and is like how just amazing she is and what a blessing she is. And then, you know, they knew that I was struggling like with like, you know, drugs and alcohol. And so we had gotten into that, and they had talked a little bit about like, you know, cause they'll recreationally use, you know, or recreationally like do whatever, you know? And I just thought like, wow, like, they still do all these things, not as much as me, but like he still loves her, you know? And I just knew like, and also, not to go off topic, but Michael K, I don't know if it's okay if I name drop somebody, absolutely. But, he would always tell me, you know, Ryan, like you are never going to be able to get clean with a partner that's getting loaded. And I had such a hard time with that. You know what I mean? Because like, I just felt like I didn't want to give that person up. You know, I was so fucking codependent on it. And so, so I really feel like that was like a spiritual experience meeting my brother, you know, and that, I knew that I had to leave him. Like, I just knew it. So, I separated with him. And I did drink a few times after that, but then I started coming back to the program. And yeah, so now that that's all over, I can talk about how great life is right now.
Perfect.
Sorry.
You got like 10 minutes.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. I'm going to wrap this up real quick. So I stopped doing hard drugs and drinking, but I was still smoking weed, dude, for 18 fucking months. I took dirty chips, you know what I mean? And, you know, I thought I was like trying to reinvent the NA wheel, you know, and NA's wrong. And I even like scratched, I don't even know if I'm allowed to say all this stuff, like, okay, but I scratched out the marijuana part in the NA book because I was like, that doesn't apply to me, you know?
That's funny.
And so, you know, life can be unmanageable even when we're clean.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not just when we're getting loaded, you know, because like I've come to the terms with the fact that like drugs and alcohol are just a solution. We're just a solution to a problem that I had. You know what I mean? And but my addiction lies in the center of my thinking. You know? So yeah. So I was living with my mom, you know, and I had just started my nail career. And, but I was still smoking weed, you know, and all my friends were in NA. I did not associate with people outside of the rooms. And I seen my friends show up clean and sober, you know, and I was just like, why can't I do that? You know, like I just so desperately wanted to show up and be myself. And that was for the first time that I realized I was using against my will. You know, and because I didn't fucking want to do it, but yet I still fucking kept doing it. Like, you know, we can continue to do things and know that they're like not right or not good for us, but then there comes like that one point where it's like, oh my God, like I understand now, you know? And I would pray, it would be in the morning, I'd be praying on the toilet, and I'd just be like, please God, just do something miraculous to where I just don't want to do this anymore, as long as I don't have to tell my sponsor. Yeah, but I my higher power speaks to me often in my own voice, you know, and through other people. But I just remember having this thought that was like, Ryan, if you're not honest with the people that you love, you're never going to get this, you know? And so October 13th of 2023, I was taking my daughter to Six Flags, and I told her because she still knew that I was smoking weed, right? Because like, mind you, like my whole entire family smokes weed, so at this point it was something normal for my kids, you know. And I knew that I had to tell my kids that I was going to have to take a newcomer chip, you know, because I didn't want them thinking I was out there like running the streets
or them to tell on you.
Yeah. Or yes, exactly. Like that was a fear of mine too. Like, oh my God, if I get my kids around my friends, like, you know what I'm saying? Like they're going to rat me out, you know? Yeah. And so I told her that, you know, hey, like I'm gonna have to take a newcomer chip, you know, because I want to stop smoking weed, you know? And she was like, well, that's stupid, you know? And I was like, no, like it's not stupid because I've been lying to the people that I love, you know? And I realized like how normal it had become in my life and in my family. And like, I just want to say like, that shit's not fucking normal.
It's not.
It's not normal and it's not okay.
Right.
You know, and I'm not damning the people who are doing it. You know what I mean? Because we all have our own story, but like life can be better. You know, you can do better. And then I called my son and I told him, and then that night on the ride home, she was asleep and I called my sponsor, you know, and I'm so fucking grateful that she did not dump me. You know, I was so terrified, you know, and then I told the people that I loved, you know, I was really scared to come back into the rooms and raise my hand because I had fucking service commitments. Like I had fulfilled a secretary service commitment for a whole year getting stoned. Like, you know, I had this fucking, this GSR commitment at the Unity. Like and I'm like sitting here like, you know, fucking smoking weed, like showing up completely blitzed to meetings, you know, and thank God, like I have already slanty eyes. Because I'm like, they never knew, you know? Yeah. So, you know what? Since then, like my life, like is beyond my wildest dreams. It's like, I have to pinch myself. Like the things that I've accomplished in these last 15 months is like unbelievable. You know, like people would say like, man, I'm living a life beyond my wildest dreams. I never understood that. I thought it was like, you know, oh, you got a fucking ton of money in the bank. You got a huge ass house, a nice car, like all these things. But like the reality is like, I can say that I'm living a life beyond my wildest dreams because I never could fucking dream this life for myself, you know? And, yeah, so like I started this nail career and like, I'm like opening up my own shop, you know?
Hell yeah.
And it's all because of like, my God, obviously, because if it was up to me, I would not be here right now. You know what I mean? I'd be off doing whatever the fuck I wanted to do, you know? And that's not good things, you know, because I didn't stop using drugs because like I didn't like it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like I have like an amazing relationship with my kids, you know, like they call me, like my son, you know, he just graduated from basic training. I just got back from Texas. Like that was such a beautiful experience, you know, and like my son trusts me today and like he calls me when he needs me and he needs advice, you know, and like just the relationship with my daughter, that's been like an ongoing building thing since I've really dedicated like myself back to like, you know, my sobriety and all of that stuff, you know, but like, man, like I have fucking joy in my life today, you know, like surrendering my will and my life over to the care of the God of my understanding, which is Jesus Christ. And also doing that also allowed me to surrender myself to the program and the way it was properly supposed to be suggestedly worked, you know? And, yeah. And my, like, even in my worst days, dude, which aren't that bad, like I still find fucking joy, you know? And like, I had the people in my life, you know, like just before I came in here, like my girlfriends called me, you know, and they're just like, just so much love, you know what I mean? Like I get to choose the people that are in my life today, you know, like I don't need to be around people that tear me down or that call me bad names, that talk behind my back. Like, it's fucking beautiful, you know, like life is fucking beautiful. And I literally thought, how am I going to talk for a whole hour?
You talk for over an hour.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that was perfect.
So before we do close, talk a little bit about your business, where it's at, a little, I'm serious, a little bit
Plug
like your
it,
name, like all that stuff, right? Okay. Because I think it's super important, especially like for anybody out there, right? They could go and hear your story and then go to your IG, because you don't just do nails. You're not just, in my opinion, right? I'm just a male, right? But in my opinion, you don't just do nails, right? You're not at a place where like you go in there and there's like 10 nail techs and it's all the same stuff. Like you're a fucking artist when it comes to nails, right?
Yeah, thank you.
And so like, where you were, right, who you were, like finding your path, and then like I think like if people are able to like go on your IG and look at that kind of stuff, and it's really beautiful work. So I would
thank you. I appreciate that. So it's in Yucaipa, up in the upper Yucaipa, right by Clothes on Yucaipa Boulevard. It's going to be called Right Off the Boulevard. And it's not just nails. Like I never thought I would work with women, you know, and like these beautiful creatures that sit in the chair across from me. Like I am so grateful for every single interaction. Like we cry together, we celebrate together. Like, you know, like I'm their therapist, they're my therapist, you know, it is so freaking beautiful. And then I also get to give them like these beautiful nails, you know, and this wonderful experience where we're building this friendship, you know. And I mean, I love to get my nails done. Not once did I ever, don't look at my nails right now, okay? Not once did I ever have like a relationship with any of the nail techs that I ever went to, you know? So yeah, I definitely feel like we do bring a different experience. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's The Claw Lab with a K. And it's exciting and scary.
You know, I never thought that like, because for men, it's a barbershop.
Yeah.
You know? And that's like can be therapeutic if you have like a good barber that you're consistent with. And nail shops, I always thought, like, I don't know what they were talking about. Like, you know, maybe they had that.
Yeah, because you can't understand them. They're talking to each other. Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to say it like that, but like
I've had my barber for like the last 10 years. Grew up with him. Love that fool. We go in there, talk about fucked up shit, and we talk about positive stuff, and we're able to like help each other with like kids. And actually, I grew up with Jimmy. Shout out to Prolific Barber Co. in Rialto. But he the same thing. He, you know, comes from the same place I come from. He started his own business. You know what I'm saying? He lives a good life, and he's just a really fucking good dude. And it's, for me, like, not only is a haircut important to me, but like the interaction. Because like I've even been in barbershops where like smoking weed, and my barber fucking smells like a fucking, you know what I'm saying, like a blunt, you know what I'm saying? And everybody's doing cocaine in the restroom. And that shit's uncomfortable for me, bro. I don't go to a barbershop to be in a trap house. Like, I want to go in like a welcoming environment. I don't give a fuck what kind of music you play. Like, all that stuff's cool. But like, I want to like be in a good, wholesome place. That's just me personally, because where I'm at in my life. Yeah. But I don't want like my barber cutting my hair while he's drunk and high. Yeah. And so like being able to go to him every, 2 weeks. I wish it was every week, but every 2 weeks,
we'll get there. One day.
Yeah, for sure. I'm thinking maybe like June, Yeah, Mike, you want to?
Yeah. So Ryan, thank you for coming on. Thank you for telling your story. If there was one piece of advice you could give to somebody, maybe who's taking dirty chips, maybe who's somebody who's trying to get clean, what would that be?
That you're worth it. You're worth it, and anything is possible. Like, all those dreams that you have that you think aren't attainable, like, they are attainable. You just have to, in my opinion, get clean, get sober, and work a program to the best of your ability. Yeah. And life can be beautiful.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan, for coming on. If you guys are listening, please make sure you comment, like, subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. We also have an IG, which is at The Message is Hope podcast _ between each of them. And if you think that anybody needs to hear Ryan's story, please be sure to send that to somebody.
And if you have somebody that you would like to hear on the podcast, we do take suggestions. We do take referrals to be on the podcast. So reach out to us on social or through our email, themessagesHopePodcast@gmail.com, and we'll see you next week. Looking for the right state of mind to get my time right. I just hope my time's right. Lost up in the limelight, but you'll never know unless you walked up in my shoes.
As someone who struggled with addiction in the past, how does it feel to be able to give hope to others who are still struggling now?
It's such an honor to be able to hear other people's experiences of life, to see how when faced with the very thing that was sent to destroy you, kill you, and take you out forever didn't, but rather you have been given a second chance to give hope and be a light for those who are still in the dark. So don't be afraid to share your message to the world. You never know whose life you might be saving.